Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Sports Speak, episode 132. I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Rahill Jaiswal here to join us as well. We have a lot to unpack today. We did our most recent episode about the NFL draft with Ethan Hoffman. You can check that one out on our YouTube and our Spotify. Not going to talk draft today because there's way too much to talk about in NBA and Major League Baseball that we have to get to. We will start with the NBA playoffs and then transition to baseball, specifically the Mets and the Yankees, with a month done in the season, and things aren't going particularly well for either one of those teams. But let's start in the NBA. And Rahill, let's start with the Los Angeles Lakers, who I tried to bring up when we did our season preview, and you're like, why are we talking about the Lakers? And guess what happened? They are now in the playoffs, won a round over the Grizzlies, and they just won game one against the Warriors. So is there a chance the Lakers are actually, with this current roster construction, capable of going on a run here?
I mean, I would say a run. I don't know how far, pending who they play in the Western Conference Finals. I think Denver or Phoenix would be an interesting matchup. But this team is finally, they figured it out. It's very well constructed. You've got a bit of everything. You look, and to be completely honest, there's been most of the games I've seen, I haven't even seen LeBron James shifted out of neutral. And they keep winning games because finally the whole plan was AD was supposed to be the best player on the team. And he has been that way. When he plays well, they win games. Look at the games he played in Memphis. Whenever he plays well, they win games. Even game one, he should be able to dominate the Warriors this series because Kevon Looney should not be able to hang with him. And that's really the only big man they have out there. And they've got shooting now. They finally got D'Angelo Russell, who can shoot the ball. Austin Reeves, who's improved his shooting, who somehow, some way has become a pretty good floor general if you look at this team. And so obviously you got to like their chances. Now, pending what happens to the Eastern Conference. I don't know if they get to the finals. I think they beat the Warriors in this series. They go to the Western Conference Finals. I'd still pick Denver or a healthy Phoenix to beat them. But again, Chris Paul's probably out for games 3 and 4. So, but yeah, they're more than capable of going on a run because they already kind of have started on a run. And it's a lot different now because the team is completely different. They've got depth finally. So they've actually got a good team around them, not just a bunch of individual sort of stars that don't really know how to play together.
Now, when we did our NBA playoff preview, I'm happy to say I went 4 for 4 in my Western Conference picks. I thought Warriors-Kings was going 7-2, and it did. That was a tough series, but Golden State, having the experience, ended up winning that over the Kings. Kings are going to be back. Memphis, I got a lot of problems with the Grizzlies, and we'll talk about them in just a couple of minutes. But Tim, with this Lakers team right now, of course, this is really cool to get to see LeBron and Steph Curry duel in the playoffs again, especially so early in the postseason with so much at stake in the second round of the playoffs. Are you feeling this way like Rahill as well, that AD is really the player that has to step up the most in this series if the Lakers want to get it done?
Well, it always has to be AD. And remember, the first game of the series, we thought the tide was going to turn for the Lakers because we thought AD was getting hurt and we weren't going to see him the rest of the postseason. So, I think he's going to be really the deciding factor. But you know what I think really is craziest about it, to be honest with you, Eddie, is the fact that going into the playoffs, of course, when we last talked about the NBA playoffs, of course, I thought my Cavs were going to go on a deeper run. They didn't. Nobody thought the Bucks would end up losing to the Miami Heat. But isn't it crazy that the tides have almost turned, that coming into the playoffs, everyone thought, man, Eastern Conference, that's where the domination is going to come from. All of a sudden now, we're talking more about Western Conference teams potentially being title favorites more than anything else. I think to me, that's the craziest part about it because it just shows how unpredictable this playoff was going to be. The thing is, though, the unpredictability, I mean, yeah, I guess the West Coast technically still had a couple, or I should say a lot more upsets than the East side. But to me, it still feels like the Eastern Conference portion of the championship has been way blown out of proportion that it really is equivalent to a crapshoot of the NCAA March Madness tournament.
I'd say that, but I also think, and let's transition. Now, we all thought that the Bucks were going to win in the first round, but we all thought that the Heat, depending on who they played in the play-in, were going to make it difficult because we've seen Miami elevate their game. They have Spoelstra, who's an excellent head coach, and Jimmy Butler knows how to turn it on when the lights are bright in the postseason. I don't think any of us thought we'd see the domination that we did. I know Giannis was hurt for the first 2 games, but hey, the Heat lost arguably their second best player as well in game 1 and didn't have him for the rest of the series or for the rest of the playoffs for that matter, in Tyler Hero. And Jimmy Butler stepped up at the 56-point performance, had the tip in game 5. And Rahill, I just feel like we don't talk about Jimmy Butler enough. The fact that this player, who I'll be honest, is not all that relevant during the regular season any year, even the year the Heat made the finals, he's a great player, but not to the extent of some of the other stars in the league. But he's able to keep the Heat afloat during the regular season without having to load manage like crazy like Kawhi, and then turns it on when it matters most in the playoffs. And for the third time in the last 4 years, the Heat are proving that they can hang with anybody when it comes to the playoffs.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, Jimmy Butler? It's crazy because in the regular season, Jimmy Butler does not dare attempts at any outside shots or any 3-pointers. And then all of a sudden, come postseason time, he's able. Not only does he take them, he makes them at a very good clip. Like, you have to respect the 3-point shot. Regular season, he doesn't dare take a 3-point shot, and his scoring bumps from like 23 to 29 in the postseason. It's absolutely ridiculous. Another shocking thing about it, Eddie, was the Miami Heat were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. All of a sudden, they go into the series against the Milwaukee Bucks. They couldn't miss. Everyone, when Tyler Hero was in the game, but Max Strus, Caleb Martin, they couldn't miss from 3. This was a team that was absolutely terrible in the regular season. So, of course, Jimmy Butler gets underrated. And also, look at where he's been. He's been on a lot of different teams, which doesn't help him. The whole blow up in Minnesota. But remember, when he was with the Sixers, if Kawhi doesn't hit that shot, I truly believe they go on to win that game in overtime, and I think they win the championship that season when he was with Philadelphia. And obviously, the Philly made the big mistake not re-signing him. He's a perfect fit in Miami because he embodies the Pat Riley way and culture better than any player there.
Yeah, and I also think he's so good at focusing on just being the number one guy. The Heat don't need another star there. I know that might have been part of the problem why things didn't work out in Minnesota or in Philadelphia, but Jimmy Butler embodies being that number one guy, and he lives up to that each and every year. So I'm going to be curious to see how far they can go, and Rahill, I'll follow up with that. With the Knicks right now, that series is even 1-1. Yes. Wait, which player is that? Is that RJ?
It's RJ, yeah.
It's RJ? All right. So question with RJ and Randall and Brunson. Everybody has seemed to sort of elevate their game. There's been a couple of injury issues for the Knicks in the last couple, but New York's been playing great. They took care of Tim's Cavs, and now they're even 1-1 with Miami. How much of a chance do you really give them here to be able to pull this out and make it to the conference finals?
Well, obviously, the scales are obviously tipped in Miami's favor right now because they split at the Garden, and the Knicks barely hung on in game 2 when they didn't even have Jimmy Butler playing. But I could raise the point that when Jimmy Butler played in game 1, it was still nip and tuck. So I really think this is a 50-50 toss-up series. I can see this going either way. I can see, Miami, I'm not too concerned about going to South Beach because Miami doesn't really have the best sort of home court advantage. But I do think this series goes 6 or 7 games. To be completely honest, I can't pick a winner. I mean, to me, it's a 50-50 toss-up series. But for the Knicks, the key is always, and it always will be Jalen Brunson. The Knicks go as he goes. I mean, the way Julius Randle has played a couple of good games, Barrett has elevated it, but the main guy in the team we all know is Julius Randle. Is Jalen Brunson. He's the main guy. They go as he goes. He's the one that makes big time shots. Josh Hart has been great off the bench. We're going to see how Mitchell Robinson progresses. He completely dominated Tim's. I don't know how he dominated the way he did Jared Allen and Mobley in the first round. So he's going to have to. He obviously has a tougher matchup now with Bam Adebayo, but this series is probably going 7, Eddie. I fully believe this will be a 7-game series.
And I did want to say one thing in regards to that first series with the Knicks. If, the topic of conversation, Eddie, when we last talked about it was, will they shoot themselves out of the series? How about they played spectacular defensively, and the Knicks were just so much more physical than the Cavs that to me, again, this looks like a re-energized team in this late portion of the season. And give Coach Tibbs credit, this team looks primed. I will say this. In the past, of course, we think about, the Eastern Conference Finals back with that team with Melo. But I really do think this team does have the capability of doing damage and potentially making an NBA Finals as long as they continue to play physical.
Yeah, and perfect example of that. Let's think about the last 2 years who's come out of the Eastern Conference. It's been the best defensive team in the conference the last 2 years. It was the Bucks 2 years ago, the Celtics under Udoka last year, undisputed best defensive teams in the conference back-to-back years. Of the teams that are still standing right now, I'd argue the Knicks might be the best defensive team of the four. I know Philly has Embiid, but the Celtics are not nearly the same level defensively as they were last year. Miami plays good defense, but not great. I think the Knicks, like you said, with the physicality, with the size, the fact that they have some positionless players like Brunson will get up there defensively and for a rebound. We know Randall can play a few different positions and can guard some of the taller players on a roster, which is going to be really helpful if they can beat Miami, if they match up with Boston or Philly, who have really unique roster construction. So right now, I think the Knicks are in a great position right now. Credit to Tom Thibodeau for coaching this team to this place. RJ Barrett has found his role, and I know they called them the mid three, but maybe that's all you need. Barrett, Randall, Brunson, none of them are the most flashy player, but as long as you have consistent pieces all there, and as a Nets fan, that's kind of a strategy I hope the Nets employ now in the offseason, now that their stars are all gone. Build around Mikal Bridges, get other players of his level, of his capacity, because I think in the Eastern Conference, a team like that can really contend, especially with the way the NBA is right now, and the fact that there are just a lot of young and inexperienced stars. There's an opportunity for some of these veteran role players that are really good to help lead a team, and that's exactly what the Knicks have been able to do. So all credit to them. But on the other East series, Rahill, Celtics and Sixers, James Harden went off for 45 in game one and then laid a goose egg essentially in game two. Embiid came back, didn't look 100%. My big upset going into the playoffs was that Philly was going to beat Boston, but with the MVP injured, I just don't really see a way right now that it's happening.
Yeah, and listen, I know Embiid came back, but he is far from 100%. I mean, he looked good on the defensive end. He had a couple nice blocks, but you just can see that there's not the same aggression. We know what an aggressive Joel Embiid looks like. That is one who's consistently getting to the free throw line, who's consistently backing people down, getting to the post, imposing his will physically. He just didn't do that, and you can't blame him because people think he has a slight tear in his knee, so he's pretty much playing on one knee. And it's just unfortunate because it's happened so many times now. You look at last season in the series against Miami, he had the back issue. He had to wear the mask because his face, it pretty much broke his face. It's just unfortunate. He can't stay healthy, and it's unfortunate. Tim, I'll let you go in a second. But
no, you would cut out for a second.
Yeah, we were in suspense, and then he came back. You're good now.
So, but it's just unfortunate. And James Harden, listen, he dropped 45 in game one. That was probably the best postseason game of his entire career. I don't see that happening consistently, just because I don't think that James Harden is capable. And first of all, when he was in Houston, he wasn't capable of doing it because never had the best postseason track record. Now that he's a little older, I don't see him doing it consistently. But hey, if you're Philly, you walk away from Boston with a 1-1 split, you take that any day. But we'll see how they regroup, and I think Tyrese Maxey needs to play a lot better. Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris really need to play a lot better. They need to step up and make their shots more consistently if they want a chance in this series.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting how this shakes out, but I just don't really see the Sixers at this point with Embiid not at 100% because the Celtics do have some lethal players. I'm going to skip Phoenix and Denver for right now. Nuggets are up 2-0. It's pretty obvious the Suns need Kevin Durant to play better and Booker to play better and try to silence Jokic, but right now they are in a big-time hole, and Denver finally looking like they're living up to their expectations in the playoffs because they finally have Murray, Porter, and Jokic all healthy for the first time since the bubble. But the other big NBA story that came out yesterday involves the Memphis Grizzlies and Dillon Brooks, who, of course, tried some trash talking. It didn't really work out. And now the Grizzlies, according to Shams Charania, said they will not be bringing him back, quote, under any circumstances. And there's been a lot of people in the media and on social media complaining about that language being used. So, Tim, how do you feel about the Grizzlies? And we don't know exactly who said this and who gave that tip to Shams, whether it came from the Grizzlies themselves or someone else who got the story wrong, because Dillon Brooks' agent is saying that that's not true. But still, I have an issue with a team just saying straight up under any circumstances, especially as bad as Dillon Brooks is and as annoying as he can be for some teams. He was a big part of the Grizzlies' chemistry, and for a team that just had a first-round exit, that was kind of a surprise. I just don't like the way this was phrased.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't exactly like the way it's phrased, but I mean, you feel like anything goes right in Memphis with how this year has gone? I feel like it's the fitting exit. I just
Yeah.
feel like it really is.
Yeah.
It's just how the year has gone. I mean, jaw will jaw, and then you have that situation. I just think it sums the whole 2022-2023 season in a nutshell for the Memphis Grizzlies. And I mean, I really think overall sports in general for this entire year's been crazy. I mean, you have the whole Dan Snyder situation, right? In the NFL side, MLB, we're talking about teams potentially moving, like the Oakland Athletics. We're seeing teams at an all-time worst. We're seeing all these other things going on, but man, Memphis has had one roller coaster this year. And I don't like how it was phrased at all. But again, to me, I keep it simple. It's just how it's summed up, Eddie. It's how the year's gone. And I think the fitting way to end it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's kind of a trend that we've seen. And of course, the Grizzlies just had such a tumultuous season, and everything happened at once. The Morant suspension, Adams and Clark both out for the year, and then they couldn't hang with the Lakers. And I had the Lakers winning in the first round. I just think there was way too many off the court distractions for Memphis, and Dillon Brooks may help that. But I also think for a young team that's trying to build chemistry, getting rid of him is just it's weird. It's a tough dichotomy because in one way it's good that they got rid of him. In another way, he was sort of a focal piece, and I don't know how that's going to really resonate with the other players in the locker room that have much higher potentials like Morant and Bane that clearly respect Dillon Brooks. So I don't know how this is going to work out. I think it's a little weird that they used that language, as funny as it is. So we're just going to have to see how it works out in the offseason and whether or not Dillon Brooks is even playing in America or if he's going to like the Guangdong Tigers or something. I don't know. He'll probably find himself on a roster. So it'll be.
He could be like Stephon Marbury and make millions across the, out of the U.S. He'd be the best player in America. So, it could work out. There's a good market for it.
Dwight Howard is tearing up Taiwan, and he also competed in the 3-point contest there. So
yeah, but
I will say, did you guys see Jeremy Lin dropped a 50-point triple-double?
Yes. Jimmer Fredette has been tearing up the European leagues for like a decade.
I don't think we're going to see anybody go play in China, though, anytime soon, unfortunately.
I don't know. I mean, that's where Eric Bledsoe is right now. So Dillon Brooks could end up anywhere. But he will not be in Memphis. That's the one thing we know. We'll come back to basketball for a little special segment at the end, but let's go to baseball now because the Mets and the Yankees, things are not going well.
They stink.
I'm going to start with the Mets because it is more
recent. Who's getting the meltdown? Is it going to be you about the Mets or is it going to be us about the Yankees?
I'm going to start about the Mets because I was just watching the game before I came up here. So Justin Verlander making his return to the mound for the first time this season, reigning AL Cy Young winner. What happens? He gives up back-to-back home runs in the first inning. Riley Green and then Javier Baez, former Met, goes oppo on Verlander. Thankfully, he hasn't allowed any other runs, but the Mets are in a span right now where they have dropped 9 of their last 11 games after they had a really impressive West Coast swing where they went 7-3, including I believe they went 4-3 against the Dodgers and Giants, which is never easy. And then you come home and you lose horribly to Washington in 2 of 3. You lose 2 of 3 to your division rival Braves. And then you drop the first 2 of a doubleheader. You get swept in a doubleheader by the Detroit Tigers, who can't field. And Max Scherzer allows 6 runs in his return. No more sweat and rosin on his hand, which, by the way, I still don't think Max Scherzer was cheating. But the fact
he wasn't. He wasn't.
The fact that it was alcohol. It was literally the alcohol they made him to clean off with. It has sugar content. It's common sense.
Yep, but guess what? Doesn't matter what he's putting on his hands. He can't throw a baseball over the center of the plate anymore. He just can't. And this goes back, it's ever since the Braves series last year where he got worn down. He got knocked around by the Braves, then imploded in the playoff game against San Diego. And then in 5 starts this year, he's got an ERA of almost 6. I know people go through slumps, but a pitcher of his caliber to have 7 consecutive bad starts dating back to last season, when you consider his age and his recent injury history, really makes you think maybe he's starting to lose it. So I'm hopeful. If I had a panic button here, I would not hit it yet, But the Mets are in a situation where they are playing Detroit. They have a series against the Reds and the Rockies coming up. If they cannot clean up over the next week and a half, I am indeed hitting the panic button, because the starting rotation has been awful. And I know there's been injuries, but besides Verlander, it has not been to key guys. They have had other people they could slide in who have not stepped up. David Peterson, the team screwed around with him for 3 years, moving him in and out of the rotation or the bullpen, and I think they ruined him. Thankfully, they have Lucchesi, but he didn't even look that good yesterday either. The bullpen, because of Edwin Diaz's patellar tendon, does not have anything besides David Robertson. Imagine if Diaz didn't get hurt, David Robertson and Diaz as an 8th and 9th. That would be pretty good. But now you have to rely on Robertson as the closer, and you have to rely on other guys to get the higher leverage 7th and 8th inning outs, and they're just not able to do it. And then, you look at the lineup. Starling Marte has not looked good at all this season. Nimmo's in a slump right now. Lindor's looking similar to 2021. The rest of the lineup at the bottom hasn't been great. Finally, the young kids are starting to produce in Beatty and Alvarez, but right now I have major concerns about the Mets. They're 1 game over 500. Again, not hitting the panic button yet, but we're getting close. So yes, that is my feeling.
I do want to say this before we talk about the Yankees. Isn't it crazy this year that when I look back and I say at the end of this year for 2022, 2023, and for the record, I don't know exactly how to call the term, but it's either going to be the year of the upset or just the year of other chaos in sports. Because if I think about it like this, go back to the NFL season, right? For the first time in forever, you had the Giants make the playoffs. You had teams like the Commanders magically become relevant. Nobody thought Seattle was going to make the playoffs. And that's just an example. You look at the basketball, you have teams like the Kings making the playoffs as a 3 seed for the first time in forever. You have teams like the Knicks potentially now going to participate in NBA finals. And then we look at the baseball side this year, and there's almost every historically horrific franchise for the last 10 seasons competing for a playoff position. You have the Pittsburgh Pirates tearing things up. You have the Cardinals, absolutely horrific, last in the NL Central. Of course, the Cubs are the Cubs, but they're doing decent. Look at the AL side. Baltimore is really starting to come to life, play good baseball. You look at other teams that have historically done awful baseball. I mean, are the Diamondbacks still winning the NL West? Are they still winning the NL West?
I think they are. I think they're a game up right now still.
I mean, but we're talking about teams, and I know we've talked about, hey, the Diamondbacks are starting to get better and better. But in 2022, 2023, to this point in the season for sports, I will say this. It's chaotic because we're watching all these teams we know to be bad year in, year out. All of a sudden, even the NCAA tournament where we see upset after upset, we're seeing these teams making the playoffs, being competitive. I feel like this is ultimately, to be honest with you, the year of the upset. And I think in Major League Baseball this year, granted, 162 games, a long way to go. You say don't press the panic button, but when I'm watching teams like the New York Mets, the New York Yankees, who are last in the division right now, I'm watching the Houston Astros lose games left and right. I mean, yeah, nobody can fix the Oakland A's, I guess, or the Kansas City Royals, but I'm watching these good teams do bad, and I'm watching all of baseball or all other sports this year, such as football, where you watch teams like the Green Bay Packers not make the playoffs and the Detroit Lions out of nowhere almost make a berth in. You watch teams like the Lakers, who have been horrific for the last 2 seasons since their championship, all of a sudden potentially put in a championship run. I think that we're in trouble if things don't start turning around soon for the Mets and the Yankees, because good teams this year have missed the playoffs, and it simply is put the year of the upset.
And you haven't even talked about the 2 biggest upsets. You hinted at March Madness. I mean, FDU beating Purdue. And then the biggest one that we aren't even going to have a chance to get to this week on the show is how the NHL, the Boston Bruins, win the President's Cup in 65 games and then choke a 3-1 lead and a lead in Game 7 against the Florida Panthers.
What about the Seattle Kraken?
When the score box showed
I think you had the Kraken after their first season that didn't do good, and they're making a push in the playoffs as well. there's so many things going on this year. I didn't even think about the NHL. You just reminded me about that. It's crazy. This year is incredible for sports. It's horrific though if you're a big, if you're a big sports team fan. Of course, I guess say the Super Bowl, you still have the Chiefs and the Eagles, two great teams, right? But at the end of the day, New York media, I mean, we already had one James Dolan upset just the other day against the Devils. I can't imagine if the Knicks go 7 in this series and the same thing happens, what it'd be like. But New York sports, we're hearing about all this promise, all this excitement, but where is it? Where is it? And now I guess this will move towards my topic, the Yankees.
Yeah, I want to just kind of open up the floor for you guys. Here's my things with the Yankees right now. Again, I don't want to panic too early, and they just won back-to-back games. But the things that Brian Cashman said yesterday in his media availability were very concerning, especially when he makes the argument that baseball is not like basketball because you can't just pull guys from the G League like the NBA. What are having 3 minor league affiliates for? The NBA, not even every team has a G League affiliate, and they only have like 12 players to pull from. You have 3 minor league teams with full rosters that you can grab guys from. I work with the Somerset Patriots. I know there are people that are promising there, and there have to be ones in Scranton as well at the AAA level, and we're seeing it right now with Jake Bowers in the majors. So that's number one. Number two, the Yankees have come back to the pack in one form. We talk about how the Mets have, Scherzer and Verlander who are old and broken down. The Yankees' 2 best players outside of Garrett Cole are historically injury prone. Aaron Judge, besides his 2 great seasons in 2017 and 2022, has been very injury prone. And Giancarlo Stanton is extremely injury prone. It happens every year. And people forget about it because every 3 weeks he'll hit a 470-foot home run. Giancarlo Stanton is aging. I don't think people realize this is his 14th season in the major leagues. He is getting up there in age. It's been 13 years since he came up as Mike Stanton with the Florida Marlins. It has been a long time now. And I know he's still relatively young because he came up young, but look at what just happened in Arizona. Madison Bumgarner got overworked in his 20s and now may be out of the league at age 33. Giancarlo Stanton is aging and is not the same player he used to be. And Aaron Judge, as remarkable as last year was, I think there are concerns about how healthy he can be for this 9-year contract, which of course they had to sign that contract. But I just think there's some problems with the Yankees roster construction. And of course, all of these injury setbacks are bad. So Yankee fans, the floor is yours for the next few minutes.
I'll let you start.
Oh, okay. Normally Tim starts, but we'll start with it. The Judge injury, we'll see. It should be a quick IL stint, but the issue every year is you talk about Giancarlo Stanton getting injured every season. The issue with the Yankees is every single year, their offense is so heavily dependent on those 2 guys that when one of them goes down, there is zero backup plan. You would think after seeing it year after year after year, the Yankees would try and add some depth, whereas if there was an injury, they would be fine. Look at their depth right now. Look who's on their bench. It's Aaron Hicks, who you will probably DFA later this season. Isaiah kind of IKF, who he doesn't really have a role. Yes, he plays center field, but you don't trust him to hit, and he doesn't really have a role. And then, now you think, Harrison Bader's coming back. Harrison Bader is a historically below average hitter. He went on that tear in the postseason, but he's historically below average. So he might help you a little bit. Josh Donaldson will help, but we all know he's washed. Like, if we're being completely honest, look at his numbers last year. So now you're putting so much pressure on Anthony Volpe and these younger guys, and everyone's like, they're not doing the job. How long does it take a rookie to adjust? You can't expect a rookie coming straight out of the league to adjust and all of a sudden become the best player. I don't think Volpe's actually been that bad. I mean, he's played solid defense and he's gotten his stroke back, but you can't expect him to all of a sudden be the best player on this team. So when even Aaron Judge does come back after his short IL stint, where does the team go from here? Because yes, DJ LeMahieu was playing solid, but DJ LeMahieu is getting older. He's clearly on the decline. Gleyber Torres is iffy. He'll probably pick up an injury every now and then. So even when Aaron Judge comes back, where does this team go? Because they are so dependent on those 2 guys staying completely healthy. There is zero depth around them. Also, I mean, the pitching, everyone wants to complain about the pitching. The pitching hasn't been terrible. Yes, we don't know what the issue with Carlos Rodon is. We don't know when he's coming back. Maybe Luis Severino slides in there. But again, you're leaning on guys like, and people like, well, Johnny Brito, is not doing the job. Johnny Brito wasn't supposed to be. He hasn't even been that bad. He's had a couple bad starts, but considering he just came up, you can't really fault him for it. Clark Schmidt, we all know, is better as a reliever. We've all looked at his numbers historically. He's better as a relief pitcher. He shouldn't be starting. So when people are saying Schmidt shouldn't be getting the ball, who's your other option? And Domingo Germán is up and down, up and down. And you don't have a closer because Clay Holmes cannot close ball games. He's a solid eighth inning guy, but he can't close games. We saw that at the end of last year, and we've seen it now. He gets the yips. So they're left searching for answers left, right, and center. I'm not going to complain about the pitching too much because that's been solid. Garrett Cole has been absolutely phenomenal this season. I mean, incredible, probably the best pitcher in the league at this point. But where do they go from that? My only issue is, there's honestly that, like, when you want to get Stanton back, late May, maybe June? At that point in the season, you're probably already out of divisional contention with the Tampa Bay Rays. So now you've got to reset your expectations for a wild card team, and you got to hope no one picks up another injury because we all know it's very possible that another one of these guys goes down later in the season, and then we're back in the same situation. It's the lack of depth that's killing them.
Yep. Tim, you got 3 minutes for your rant, so floor is
Well,
yours.
I'll say it like this. I mean, Rahill hit it on the nose, depth. And it goes back to when I talked about in the offseason of how do you solve the problem with the New York Yankees? Who is going to be that guy that hits 300 and doesn't have to sit here and produce 50 plus bombs in a season? It is outrageous that when you think about it, Aaron Judge has a historic season, wins MVP, and the Yankees do nothing. You look at this year, Garrett Cole is going to probably win Cy Young, pitched the year of his career outside of Houston, and the fact of the matter is he has no run support, no help, game in, game out behind him. I can't stand it. The Yankees could have got Xander Bogaerts instead of investing into a pitcher that hasn't even pitched a single pitch in the Yankees uniform since. You could have had him play shortstop. He's tearing it up in San Diego. And by the way, Anthony Volpe could have probably still played shortstop for the New York Yankees or somewhere else around the infield, and the pressure wouldn't have been put on him. We watched Jake Bauers. That's great and grand. He hit his first home run, but realistically, he's been a Mendoza line hitter his entire career. You look at Franchi Cordero, that was an 8-game thing. He's 8 for freaking 56 to open up the year. Aaron Hicks sucks. I'm sorry, and I agree with you, Rahill. When you look at it down the middle, I just don't see offensive production outside of Aaron Judge, and of course when Stanton is healthy, coming out of this outfield, whether it's healthy or not. Nobody can hit for average. DJ LeMahieu, unfortunately, is inconsistent right now. He's still, in my opinion, the best option for the Yankees to lead off. I don't despise Volpe. I think he's really reaching my expectations for this year. To this point, I didn't expect him to bat high for average. I do wish maybe the at-bat sides could get a little bit better, but there's still a long way to go. But the fact of the matter is that Josh Donaldson is horrific. There's nobody that can play that third base position properly for the New York Yankees, and we do not have a closer. And to be honest with you, it goes back to when David Robertson was the closer of the New York Yankees, where, hey, D-Rob's tearing it up still. Great pitcher, but he was inconsistent. I look at Clay Holmes, and I look at him, and I say, man, this is Pittsburgh Clay Holmes, the bad Clay Holmes that I know before the Yankees picked him up. So I view it like this. The Yankees are a mess, and to be honest with you, if we finish last in the division, I'll just be glad we go above 500. And all I can hope for, and I've been saying it now for 3 months, I hope Brian Cashman gets fired as a general manager of the New York Yankees, because I am tired of sitting here and talking about, Aaron Boone. Don't get me wrong. Aaron Boone, it was his fault the other day when Domingo Germán got his second hit of the game and you pulled him out. But that's 1 out of 162 every single season for the last 3 years. Aaron Boone has been getting failed by Brian Cashman, the man calling the shots, and it's absolutely ridiculous, the fact that we have to stand here and look at this baloney week in, week out.
3 minutes and 6 seconds. That was great. That was some great content. Let's finish with this. I want to talk a little basketball, but involving us playing, because Tim, I have to give you a statistical update. We brought it up last time. I dropped 11 points. I got in double figures this year at Jersey Mike's Arena. But Rahill, I know you were also playing basketball too, and I saw a picture of you wearing one of those like big hats. Do you still have the big hat?
That was for wiffle ball, but yeah, I still have it in my
it's
dorm.
wiffle
If you
ball.
want, you want me to put it on?
Sure.
All right, give me 1 second.
Let's go. But yes, I dropped 11. It was great.
There it is. We
Let's
got it at
go.
Syracuse. It was a Syracuse Mets game where we got it.
Sergeant
We're like
Jaiswal.
10 minutes from the stadium, but yeah, here it is.
Nice. Nice.
Nice.
Tim, you gotta
How
go.
much was it?
I don't remember the exact price, but it actually wasn't too bad. I thought it would be more, but not terrible.
I need to get a big hat, but I did drop 11 in that game, and that was
Yes,
pretty
I don't
good.
think you.
I got
I don't
9 in
think
the
you
first
need a
quarter.
big hat.
I did. I was more productive than Aaron Hicks has been this entire season. I assume Rahill was on the wiffle ball field as well. But
Yeah.
yes, that'll do it
Yes.
for Sports Speak. Next time we'll probably talk a little football in light of the draft and Aaron Rodgers and all that. So stay tuned. It is basically summer for us college kids, so we are going to have a lot more time to record episodes over the next few months. So stay tuned for that. Also follow along with our NASCAR Pick'em on Twitter, where I continue to fail. Brad Keselowski got me a top 5, and then Kyle Larson, of course, wrecked at Dover. So I am like 200 points behind everybody else, but that's okay. But until next time, I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Signing off of Sports Speak. Enjoy the rest of your week.